It all started a couple months ago. I opened the other side of my closet, the side that rarely gets opened, the side where I cram all the things that I want to keep out of sight and out of mind. And as I opened the closet, out of my peripheral vision, I noticed something tumbling down at me, and before my brain even knew what was happening, my body reacted, my hand shot up, and I caught this, inches before it caved in my forehead. Now this is an airbrush compressor. I had purchased this along with all the other things needed to make scale models, I don't know, a couple years ago. I purchased an airbrush compressor, all sorts of paints, tweezers, files, weathering kits. I got a Spitfire Mark I modeling kit from Tamiya, just all the things you could possibly imagine needing to make scale models. And then I never did anything with them. I never touched any of it. Turns out I had neither the time nor the space to make scale models. So I packed it all up and I put it away for another time. I had many things put away for another time. So, after nearly getting brained by this falling airbrush compressor, I decided it was time for a clean out. I decided I was going to go through everything, all my possessions, and I was going to make a pile of all the things that I no longer needed, no longer used, things for hobbies that I just wasn't into anymore, and I was going to clear it all out. And I ended up with a very large pile of extraneous possessions, some of which were worth quite a bit of money, like old Lego sets from the 90s that I've been hauling around with me for decades that were selling for hundreds of dollars on eBay. And I decided, if I could be diligent, if I could be disciplined, if I could force myself to sell all of this stuff, clear it out of my apartment, that I would put half the money, just put it away for a rainy day, but the other half I would be able to put towards a hobby that I do actually make time for every single day, and that's photography. I haven't sold everything yet. Obviously, I still have this homicidal airbrush compressor, but I've sold most of it, and I have gathered quite a lot of money from selling these possessions, and so a thought started creeping into my head. Maybe I could actually get a Leica M camera, a Leica film rangefinder camera. It might be possible. But which one? So, they still make film cameras, Leica does today. They have an MP, an MA, and a new M6. They cost over $6,000 new. And even if you buy used, they're going to be anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000. So those were right out. There's no way I was going to purchase one of those. So what about the M6 Classic? That's the Leica that was made, I think, from like the early 80s into the 90s, something like that. It has a light meter built into the camera, and it has become extremely popular recently. It's the camera that a lot of the YouTube photography influencer type people seem to use and seem to champion. And as a result, the used prices for those cameras have gone up exponentially. They are still thousands of dollars, or they are now thousands of dollars. So that was out. What about all the other models? There was the original M3 that came out in 1954, I believe. That one doesn't have frame lines for anything wider than 50 millimeters. So to me, I was like, I think that's out. I like to use mostly 35, sometimes even 28 millimeter when I'm doing photography. There was the M2, which was similar to the M3 except kind of stripped down. They got rid of the automatic frame counter. They did add a 35 millimeter frame line and made the viewfinder at 0.72 magnification, so you could use a 35 millimeter lens. The M3 has a 0.92 magnification, I think, somewhere around there, almost 1-to-1. That seemed nice too, but it also lacked the quicker film loading that the newer M cameras have. And I didn't like the old-fashioned style rewind knob that the M3 and the M2 have. There is the M4P that a lot of people seem to have gravitated towards now. It's basically made exactly like the Leica M6, except it doesn't have the light meter, has the same frame lines. It has the same kind of build quality, which isn't quite, according to what I've read on the internet, quite up to snuff with the M2 and M3. There is the M4 II, which is similar to the MP, except I think it lacks the 28mm frame lines. There's the M5, kind of the ugly duckling of the Leica M series that a lot of people hated when it was originally released, and now it's kind of getting this sort of resurgence where people are taking another look at it. I think because the M6s are so expensive, people have decided, oh, actually the M5 is really good. And it probably is really good. It has a light meter. It has a lot of features that the classic Leicas didn't have. So it's not a completely, mechanical camera. There are some electronic components to it. But the one that I kept going towards was the M4. And I didn't understand why it seems to be sort of the forgotten Leica. Everything I learned about it as I was doing my research made it seem like the absolute perfect camera for me. It was still made in the traditional way that the M3 and the M2 were. It was made basically by hand by people in Wetzlar, Germany, at the original Leica factory, and it was the method by which they had all these brass gears and parts, and they would fit them into the cameras, and then they would adjust the pieces to make them all fit perfectly together, like clockwork, like a finely tuned Swiss watch. It had the brass top and bottom plates, it had the alloy body, it was fully mechanical, there was no light meter, no battery, no electronics that could go wrong. It had the new style film wind that was much quicker with the crank. It had the new style film loading where you didn't actually have to take out a spool to load the film onto. You could just drop the film into the bottom of the camera. It had frame lines for 35mm, 135. So the 35mm had also had the 135mm frame lines in it, 50mm and 90mm. It just seemed like the perfect combination of kind of the really old, classic, handmade, precision-crafted Leica rangefinders, especially the M3, with the newer kind of quality of life improvements of the M6, but without the light meter, which I didn't really want. I didn't want anything electronic in the camera. If somebody had handed me a Leica M6 and said, here you go, I would certainly love it. But as I was doing my research and thinking of actually purchasing a Leica, if I couldn't afford an M6, a newer camera with a light meter, if I knew I had to have a very old camera, I wanted one that had completely mechanical systems, so there was nothing electronic that could go wrong. So, after doing all this research and deciding that I wanted to go for the forgotten Leica, the Leica M4, which I have here, I found one in Canada on eBay, and this one had recently been serviced by YYE Camera, or YYE Camera, I'm not sure exactly how you're supposed to say that, and it just seemed like the absolute perfect M4 for me. The pedigree of the M4 as well, this is the camera that Gary Winogrand used. Lots of reporters during Vietnam. Like this camera has a huge pedigree behind it. So I found one in Canada that had recently had a CLA. I actually have the work order or the email that YYE Cameras sent to the former owner. Have your camera done. Leica M4. The flash problem is simple. The flash contact was bent a little and did not contact with the shutter fired. I have corrected the contact and the flash works well now. I tested the flash and made sure it worked well. There is no charge for this repair. CLA. Cleaned and lubricated mechanical parts, adjusted shutter speeds, shutter works well at all speeds now. The vulcanite on the body is brittle and keeps falling out, so I have recovered the camera. Cleaned the finder and adjusted the focus. The finder is clean and clear now. Tested the camera with a blank roll of film to ensure film winding and rewinding were all good. Below is the total due for the service. Leica M4 CLA, $230. Recovering the camera, $60. 30% expedite fee, $87. 5% PayPal fee, $18.85. Total, $395.85. So this had just been serviced. It was actually in January of this year that it was serviced. So complete CLA, vulcanite replaced, everything calibrated to perfection. The price was very reasonable already, especially for it having had a recent service. I made an offer. The offer made it even more reasonable. The offer was accepted, and then the fact that it was in Canada and the exchange rate is very, very favorable if you were an American purchasing something in Canada, it became too good to pass up. I had to get it. And I basically paid about half of what you would pay for this camera if you were getting it on KEH or another camera site that offers used gear that had been, tested and has a guarantee. I paid a remarkably good price for this camera. And now I have a Leica M4. It's kind of crazy. I never, ever thought I would own a Leica M film camera. And the fact that I now have this beautiful M4 that is in such pristine condition. I mean, it's not pristine. There are a few little scars, a few little scratches, but it's in perfect working order. It is a thing of absolute beauty, and I have been just absolutely loving it in the week or so that I have had it. I got this Voigtlander 35mm f2 Ultron lens on here. I got it used from a Japanese seller, paid basically less than half what it costs new in the US, and I'm loving this. I love the focus tab. I find that really useful. You can basically go from infinity to the minimal focal distance in a very, very short amount of time. There has been a bit of a learning curve though. The focus is the exact opposite. The throw is the exact opposite as it was on my Nikon FE2, or as it is on my FE2. The aperture ring is at the front of the camera as opposed to, or the front of the lens as opposed to the very back of the lens as it is on my FE2. So it's completely opposite. On my Nikon, over here is infinity. On the Leica, over here is infinity. So it's hard to wire my brain to get that working properly. Focusing with the rangefinder is just very different than it is with the Nikon SLR that I use. There are a lot of little things that I'm just trying to get my head around. I want everything to become automatic as I'm using this camera, and I'm sure it will. I've already noticed, in a weird way, fewer people pay attention to you when you have this camera, which I would think, obviously I know what a Leica is, and when I see a Leica, my eyes widen and I get excited and I want to go talk to the person about the Leica. But I guess the normal average person has no idea what a Leica is. And it's weird, when I would take my Nikon FE2 out, when I'm out with that, it just looks so film camera-y, I guess. It looks like the quintessential film camera. If you looked up film camera in the dictionary, it would have a picture of my Nikon FE2. And people notice it, and they would talk about it, and they'd pay attention to it. If they saw me with it up to my eye, they would see me, and they would kind of give me glances. Young people who were interested in film photography would come up to me and talk about it. It was very hard to be stealthy with that camera, or not even stealthy, but just kind of unobtrusive. But for some reason with this camera, in the week that I've been using it, I can go out and I can take pictures and most people don't even seem to notice. The shutter is so quiet. You could be right behind somebody and they don't hear it. And the few people who do ask me about the camera are people who know what Leicas are and they want to talk about Leicas because they see that I have a Leica. But most people don't seem to notice and don't seem to care. So I think this is going to be the perfect camera for me for doing kind of documentary style photography where I can get close, I can be amongst people and people don't really notice me. I think I'm going to be much faster with this than I am with my Nikon FE2 as far as focus and framing and everything else. I just think I'm really going to love this thing. I already do. I think I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. I think it is possibly the most beautiful mechanical object made by human hands that I have ever touched in my entire life. I'm not going to do the film wind and the shutter right now because I have film in this camera, but when I first got it and I didn't have a lens, I would just sit at my desk winding it and hitting the shutter over and over and over because it was so tactile and satisfying and just a thing of absolute precision and beauty. I have a Leica M4, and I will have a Leica M4 for decades to come, and I will use this Leica M4 for decades to come, and you will be seeing a lot more of this camera on this channel, and you'll be seeing a lot of my work made with this camera. You always have to have the caveat, a camera is just a light tight box that allows you to take pictures. It's not gonna make your pictures better, yada, yada, yada. I do think it's going to help me take different kinds of pictures. I've already noticed that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what I'm able to come up with the help of this camera. So, thank you so much for watching. I've been your good friend Bradley, you've been the audience. This is my brand new old Leica M4. I'll see you later.